Hi everyone, welcome back to our ongoing series on how to create a life operating system in Notion. The last two videos have started to look at the Notion API and how we can put that to good use for us. The next few videos are going to continue in that theme, and then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program. In the previous video, we looked at how Google Calendar can sync and integrate our events with our Notion calendar in our daily action zone and our action items task database. There was one problem with the way we did things in the previous video. That approach does not work with recurring events in Google Calendar. So this video, we're going to look at recurring tasks across the board, both events and general tasks that aren't at a scheduled time. There are two ways to do this right out of the gate with the Notion API that work really well, and there's a place for each of them. It's not one or the other, it's both in the right circumstances. So I'm going to show you in this video how to implement recurring tasks in a way that's fully automated using the Notion API and Zapier. We're going to correct the issue with recurring tasks syncing Google Calendar to Notion, and then we'll look at an additional way to do it that's helpful in some other circumstances. But across the board, we're going to get our recurring tasks fully automated in this video. And this is a particularly exciting video for me because the two big ideas I want to share with you today both evolved through ongoing discussions in the online community that I run, the Year Zero Collective. We have a whole channel dedicated to the Notion API, as well as other channels on many other topics. And through discussions in the Notion API channel, we tested and resolved and found the best way to do each of these two scenarios. And that's what I'm going to share with you. But it's exciting that it came through an ongoing community discussion. And I just think that's awesome. So I just love to see that it's becoming more of a collective process of exploring and finding good solutions as the community around Pillars, Pipelines, and Vaults expands. So very excited about that. If you're interested in being a part of that community, you're welcome. There's more information on it at yearzero.io, as well as information on my upcoming course, Notion Life OS. And with that, let's dive in. The one problem with what I shared in the previous video on how to sync Google Calendar events in your master task database is that when you set a repeating event in Google Calendar, an event that repeats daily, weekly, monthly, every 2 weeks, whatever, that did not transfer over because in many cases, there's no end date and it created an infinite loop. So as a precaution against that, Zapier has essentially blocked recurring tasks, all of them, which isn't helpful to us. However, there is a way to do it, and that's what I'm going to show you today. And then the second way to establish recurring tasks in Notion without using Google Calendar at all, it's a single-step Zap in Zapier, so it can be done on the free plan, and I'll show you how to do that as well for different kinds of recurring events in other circumstances when you're not trying to sync events from Google. So let's take a look at how you set this up, starting with the Google Calendar sync of recurring events. So I'm going to show this in Zapier. Variations of this can be done in Automate.io as well. Zapier is the one I know the best. It's the one I use, and it does have more integrations with other applications, and it has more conditional logic and more functionality. So we make a new Zap, and we are going to start with Google Calendar. Just like in the previous video, we will choose our trigger event. Now here's the crux of it. In the previous scenario, when we created a new event from Google Calendar, we started with new event. This works very well with individual events, but this is the one that does not work with recurring events. So the trick now is to use event start. So it's going to trigger at a time that you define relative to the start of an event. So it's not when the event is created, it's a time prior to the start of the event, and you can set that duration prior to the event that triggers the start. So once the series of recurring events are created, it will add those to Notion as they fall within the time period. So if you have a 2-week time period, then everything that's starting within 2 weeks will appear in Notion. I've been using an 8-week time period, so it's 2 months out. So 2 months out, everything in my Google Calendar starts porting into Notion automatically. So that means 3 months out, none of them are in, but 2 months out, all of them are in. And I think that's totally fine because again, we're scheduling in Google Calendar. So when we're scheduling an event several months out, we're still looking in Google Calendar to see our availability. We schedule it. It's just in our short-term action planning in Notion where we need to see the most immediate ones come through. And this, of course, solves the recurring task problem because they're already created. They just roll within that time window prior to which they are scheduled to come into Notion. So we do event start. I'll show you how to set this up. Now you choose your account your Google Calendar is in, and then you hit continue. Now, within that calendar Gmail account you can have as many calendars as you want. And you can choose from the available calendars. In this case, I just have the one. So what I'm doing is choosing weeks here, and you can set it to any of these time periods, but set weeks. We want to have it come within a pretty good distance out into the future, and I will set this to 8 weeks. You could set it shorter, you could set it longer, but also important to note, anything that you add to your calendar that's already within that 8 weeks or whatever time period you set will also be automatically added to Notion as well. So it doesn't have to be right at the 8-week prior point that that event is seen by Zapier. It's anything within the 8-week period that you add will also be copied over to Notion. So it works really well. You can leave search term blank and hit continue. All right, now we test our trigger. As long as you have something in there within that 8-week period, it will test and be approved. Then hit continue. Now we want to add Notion. If you don't see it listed, you just type Notion, choose the Notion beta. Now we want to create a database item. Hit continue. You choose your Notion account, which you set up as we described in the previous video, using the Notion link that explains how to set it up on the Notion side. That's included under the previous video. Below this video, I will link to the previous video to make it easier to find. All right, so now we're setting up the action. So now we choose our database. Action items is the name of my database for my tasks. So we're all set. We hit continue. Now it didn't refresh with the properties that went to the test. We need to now go back up to action setup, and it will list all the properties of the database here, which you need. So now we want to set it up just like we did in the previous video where we had a new event triggering the automation. Now we have a specific time period prior to the event triggering the automation. So we have to set this up the same way. So for action item, this is the name of the entry. Action item is the title, the text field for the entry for the event or the task. So summary is what Google calls it. We want to map summary to the title in Notion. Just like that. We want to set it to active status. If you want to assign an owner because you're using it with multiple people, you could assign yourself as an owner here. Importantly, we want to assign a priority. These are scheduled events, so we will click scheduled. If you wanted, you could also have a second calendar for other types of events that aren't the classic scheduled event, and you could assign a different priority in a different Zap for that other calendar. Remember in the previous step with Google Calendar, we were able to choose which calendar within our account. So you can do different Zaps with different priorities for different accounts if you want. Now, I'm not filling any of this other stuff in. Due date, of course, is very important. This is the date the event begins, and we're going to use the event begins field. Some of these, like private, won't pertain to you. Those are unique to my setup. Of course, you want to include the link back to the Google Calendar event, which even though this particular sample data doesn't include, we know it's HTML link that transfers the URL link over. And end completion date, just as we described in the previous video, will be the event ends time. And then content will be the description, which is the body of the event that goes into the page in Notion. And with that, we're done, just like last time. And then you test that, and you turn on your Zap. So we come back to Google Calendar event to make sure it's working. We'll give it a couple emojis. Test event, so it's easy to spot in the new calendar. Then we'll add a time, let's say 3 p.m. and we want it to repeat. So we click custom to set the repeat parameters. Let's say it's every 2 weeks on Saturdays, so it's every other Saturday. But I like to put an end date. If there is an end date, nothing's truly infinite. So at least I do this just to prevent any mass Zap explosions. So even if it were very long term, I might put in 3 years, say, rather than infinite. And it'll be a rolling 2 months. As anything comes within the 2-month window, it'll be added at that point into Notion. So we're done here. Okay, so now we're in the action items database. I'm not in the action zone, I'm in the source of the action items master task database, so we can get the rolling version and see how the recurring events come through. So you can see I've got the rest of my week scheduled out. Next week I haven't scheduled yet. I'll do that with my weekly review. So now I see the event has come in right here with our 3 emojis, which helps us spot it. It's scheduled. It's set up properly with the link. Everything's right. The start time, the end time. And then it skips a week because we set the recurring event to be every other Saturday. So the second one's here. The third one's here 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks later. As time moves on, another one will appear here in a week or two. And then as time moves on, they'll keep popping in every other Saturday. So that's awesome. So the only catch I've found here is that we can batch add the recurring events. You can delete or change individual ones, but you cannot batch delete them. In Google Calendar, you can delete one and it'll ask you if you want to delete all of them or just the one. If you do just the one, it'll sync properly. If you tell Google Calendar to delete all of them, it will not delete all of them. So that's an imperfection in this automation. Similarly, say in Google Calendar, you move the date from one to another, you drag it to a different date. It'll ask you if you want to apply it to all of them. If you say yes, it'll move all of them over, but it'll leave the old ones still there. So it'll duplicate them. So the batch editing and batch deleting is not working so well. The batch creation for recurring events works very well. So the way we define our workflow is we can batch create them, and then any modifications or changes would need to be done on an individual basis. So not ideal, but still gets us most of the way there, and I'm pretty happy with having this at this point. Obviously, this is going to improve over time, and that will be solved, and then we'll have perfect sync eventually. So I'm really happy with this automation and what it enables and how it solves the biggest problem we had from the previous video. And now together we have a very functional system. And I want to give a big shout out to John Burrows from the Year Zero Collective online community that I host. He's the one who shared this with our community and through a lot of testing came up with a lot of good solutions, that among them. So thanks, John. That was a great insight and happy to share that with everybody now. Then we come back to Zapier and we create another news app. So this is the other scenario. There is a built-in schedule feature in Zapier that can be very helpful to us in a number of ways. Instead of picking an app, we look to the right where it says schedule. It has 3 internal functions and we choose schedule. And then we have the scheduler by Zapier. Then we want the triggering event. How frequently do you want Zapier to trigger the event based on these time intervals? So we can now set a recurring event that Zapier will trigger and initiate. And each time that time period is hit, the event that we define will be added to Notion. So if you wanted to remind yourself to pay a certain bill every Tuesday, you could set in every week Zap, and then you would create an action, hit continue, and then you can choose the day of the week, and you can choose the time of day for that Zap to trigger. If you wanted it first thing in the morning, you could do it in the middle of the night or whenever. Similarly, if we went back, want to have something recurring every month, you can click every month, continue. It'll choose the day of the month that you want that to occur and the time of day. So you can set up any time period to trigger Zaps. Now, this approach, what's going to happen is it's going to trigger it each time at that interval. But what you can do, let's say we set it to every week, hit continue. We choose, say, every Monday. Let's say it's at 4 a.m., so it's waiting for us first thing in the morning, and we test our trigger. And this will, of course, always pass. Then we come to set up our action in Notion. So we type Notion, choose Notion. We choose the event we want. We want to create a database item because it will add the recurring event in the database that we choose. First, we choose the right Notion account. And this is set up just like we talked about in the previous video in terms of connecting your Notion account to Zapier. You choose the database. If it's our task database, if it's a recurring task, we want that in our action items database or whatever you call your task database. We'll continue. It didn't give us the properties for the database, so we have to now go back to set up action, and it will have brought in all the properties. So now we have the action, but the problem is now we need to set, in addition to the properties we're used to, like the title, status, active, we'll want to name the event. Say if it's pay a bill, we'll say pay electric bill or whatever, rent. And that's going to be the title. You could put an emoji in there if you wanted to have a stronger indicator. Whatever you title it, that's what it's going to name the event every time. You choose active because you want it to be an active task. Assign an owner if you have multiple people in your account. Choose your priority. You could make it immediate. You could make it quick. Whatever you want to define it in your priority listing. Now the due date, this is interesting. We need to tell it when make the due date. So with Zapier, you can type in text descriptions and it will apply them. So we could put in today. That means it will make the due date the day it's creating the Zap. But then it's being created only at the day that you need to do it. There's no heads up for what's coming up, further ahead in the week or further ahead in the month. So what you might do is type in next week. So this way it's being set up a week ahead of time. So the date you set earlier, you want that to be a week out date, and then you want it to be assigning a task that's a week later. So here's some information. So format supported. You can write tomorrow at noon. You don't have to write the numerical number. It's very good at interpreting dates. So you can write tomorrow at noon. You can write next week. You can write next Friday at 7 p.m. You can use any of these text entries to define when you want the task to be added from the point that the trigger has been defined. So you just basically need to describe it. And then it will be triggered at this point you define here, and it will be added a week out, or you could even define it further out. And then you have more heads up as it's approaching. In this case, there's no GCal link because we're not using Google Calendar. This is just a straight timer assigning a task into Notion. You don't need end completion date, and you don't need content. If you wanted to add content, if there were a checklist or some body of information you wanted to be added to the recurring event in the page below the properties in Notion, you could certainly add those right here under content. And then we hit continue and we can test. Now this one was a quick task. The name was pay electric bill and we triggered it from the start date. So let's go see if we can find pay electric bill was added. And now this was added by the test. So this was added 1 week out from today because we just ran the test right now. The future ones will be run on the schedule that was set by the Zap. So once you turn it on, it'll start sending the pay electric bill every week, assigning it a week into the future each time it runs. Of course, you can set it for further out if you want, no problem, but it's going to create it each time. So you create a Zap for each recurring event you want. On another discussion thread in the Notion API channel in our online community, Chad Barnier had a great idea for PPV users on how to apply this Zap. And he had a great idea that I've actually integrated into my system as well. And what we're going to do is have this Zap automatically create your new daily tracking entry. So this is your daily journal. It's your daily habit tracker. If you track any information for your life, for your business, as I track sleeping and certain health stats, and then also business stats, each morning I enter the data that's necessary. Hopefully eventually we'll have more and more of that come in automated. But the creation of the entry and the automatic application of the date for the entry can be created using the Zap on a daily basis. I'll show you how that's done. We're back here on the action zone, and the daily entry right here, each day, it will automatically create the new page. This was done using this Zap automation. It will enter the date automatically, and it gives us a nice formatting. Remember, when we enter these, we have no way to have it automatically fill in the title. And historically, we've always had to just type that in based on the date stamp here. But now what we can do is have this entered automatically and the entry created automatically. So when we get to our desk, this is already sitting here empty. When I got here, none of these were checked off. It was ready to go. It was already created with the date stamp in there. And that just saves a little bit of time, and it's just elegant how it's sitting there waiting. It also reminds you to do it, because when you don't have one here, it's easy to forget and jump into the day. So you get a reminder, you get it created for you, and you have the date entered. The way we do that is we use a schedule Zap. We choose the event trigger, which will be every day. We'll continue. Trigger on weekends, it's up to you, but we'll say yes. Time of day, we'll have a trigger at say 4 a.m. So it's always waiting for us there, first thing in the morning. Test your trigger, continue. Now we want to create a Notion action. Create a database item in the daily tracking database, or whatever you call your daily entry database. Choose your Notion account. Now, of course, again, you'll have to go to the daily tracking database and add Zapier to it under the shared link in the upper right corner. Continue. You choose the database. It has to be linked ahead of time. It already is, so we choose daily tracking. It, again, doesn't give us the properties, but if you hit continue and come back to it, it will. So go back up, don't test yet, go back up to set action again. Now daily tracking is entered. What do you want it to be called? Now we can take the properties and use what's called the pretty date, which is the date that looks nice. It'll be May 28th, 2021. That'll be the title entered every day, the current date in that format. Now none of these we want to check off. Hopefully someday we'll be able to automate more and more of these, but right now we just leave these blank for ourselves to fill them out when we get to the daily entry. But of course you could fill anything out here if you wanted to. Unfortunately, we cannot automatically apply the template. Hopefully someday we'll be able to apply a template. Hit continue, and then you would test it and then turn on the Zap, and then remember to name it up here. Now back in Notion, tomorrow morning when you come to your desk, let's say tomorrow is the 29th, you'll have a new entry here for the 29th. I'm filtering for day is today only, so it's only going to show the current ones. Some people have found it's helpful to filter for date is today or date is yesterday. So it shows today's and yesterday's, helps them to fill out any that they forgot to have completed the previous day. It's up to you. I like to keep it clean with just one. And this will automatically enter your new calendar entry every day with the title already filled out as the date. A nice touch. Thanks, Chad, for that great idea. And you can put this Zap to use in many ways. So there you go. 2 great ways to automatically have recurring tasks and events generated and entered into your Notion database. Something we've wanted a long time, and it's finally here in at least 2 very effective ways. So I'm going to be putting these to good use, and I hope you will too. I'll be doing a few more videos on helpful API applications that I think will be very useful for pillars, pipelines, and vaults and various life management systems. And then after we do a few more of those, we'll get back to some other ideas I have to convey how to put pillars, pipelines, vaults in action in your life. I want to show it in more real world contexts. So I have some ideas I'm excited about bringing to this channel in the near future. If this is of interest, be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to get updates on future videos, leave thoughts or questions below, or join us in our online community for a broader conversation. That's at yearzero.io, where you'll also find information on the upcoming Notion Life OS course. And please hit like if you found this valuable. I also write a newsletter on increasing human capability. I give away several of my best Notion templates to anyone who subscribes to the newsletter. You can, of course, unsubscribe at any time, but I hope you'll give it a chance. I work super hard to pack it with a lot of valuable insight. The newsletter link is also below in the show notes. Thanks for watching. Lots more to come.